will of our true self, we are inevitably doing the will of the universe. In magic, these are seen as indistinguishable. That every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself. And as long as you are doing the will of the universe, then it is impossible to do anything wrong.
There is this connection between everybody and his total environment.
Howdy, howdy, folks. Thank you for joining me. This is a interesting experiment. This kind of coincides a lot with my work with Hauntomancy and Haunt Manual. Basically, the communion of magic and creativity for past selves, for what I call sentimancy, not nostalgia. I think nostalgia can be poison, and that's not what I'm meaning. Yeah, and basically through my work with Hauntomancy and communing with these lost aspects of self, with all the abundant creativity and albums and music and Videomancy and all these video projects and all this great stuff that has happened, I felt like it was time to kind of, I don't know, maybe dive into the talismans of the past that helped shape who I am since I was a kid, and other kind of fun, weird artifacts. So this Mediamancy excursion, I guess we could call it, is kind of a review, page turner. Let's read together, and let's dive deep into spooky season. So thank you for joining me. Today we are going to be talking about the illustrious and somewhat ubiquitous magazine / encyclopedia of the occult that was originally published in Britain in the 1960s. No, I'm wrong. Already wrong. Publication commenced in 1970 and continued for 112 issues spanning 1,000 articles with some 5,000 illustrations. I am, of course, talking about Man, Myth, and Magic. And here is number 1. It was printed periodically, I think every few weeks, which you'll find out. It's a really cool idea. And working with We the Hallowed in our publishing house, it dawned on me that I really wanted to investigate kind of these archaic but wondrous forms of analog media, print, but with that, the kind of routinized nature of releasing things. And what's neat is this was printed in this magazine form, as I said, every couple of weeks, and it eventually collected into an encyclopedia volume. So it's awesome. It's almost like the correlation what I've been doing with the Song Sigil series with the REVEL ROSZ project is periodically putting out this Song Sigil and the video art with it, and it will culminate into this kind of big hyper sigil of a debut album from that moniker. And so I thought that correlation was really cool. I also just thought, these are fucking all over the place in the minds and myths of magicians and artists, especially Gen Xers to millennials. They are just, as I've said, ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Everybody remembers these in some form or fashion, almost like the Time Life, supernatural series, hardbound books that you'd find at Goodwill if you were lucky. These came to me. I have almost all of them. I thought I had all of them. I have about 100 or so. I think the entire total was what did I say? 112. Yeah. But I thought we'd go at least over, the first publication, and then check out if there's time, if we're feeling it, maybe do number 2. But right here, for this Mediamancy, I thought it would be neat just to, if this is a, a weekly thing, a monthly thing, we can always come back to Man, Myth, and Magic. I mean, it is a wealth of information, of beautiful photography and art, just wonderfully captured in that, like, distilled ambiance of Kodak film of the 1970s, and that grain, that kind of like yellow hue that is so synonymous with the kind of hauntology of that time. Pretty remarkable stuff. And if anyone is like me and on the neurodivergent spectrum, you love encyclopedias. Absolutely love bits of information in multitudes, and laid out, digestible form, so I can ragamuffin around and be ramshackle with my knowledge and ascertaining these things. So as a kid, these were like the holy grail. Funny enough, they didn't come to me through any familial sect. A friend of mine, when I was in Boy Scouts in Arizona, who, I think it was around the time, funny enough, that the Crow City of Angels came out, and we were little goth kids in the desert, and his dad had these, and we had to sneak them like they were porn. So, not to fetishize, occult media, but I think that's probably where it was born from. But anyways, yeah, so it's sparked throughout my life. I got these copies, and these are the first initial pressings of the magazine turn encyclopedia, which is really wonderful. You can find them on eBay, rarely kind of in this form, but you can find hardback editions collected into volumes. But a really dear friend of mine, in around 2011, was at a like an estate sale, I think, in California, and she came to me with this huge box and heavy as shit, just stacked to high heaven of these. And it's not like I ever really talked about this magazine specifically, but it was just one of those, synchronous things where it was presented to me like, hey, I got these for $5 or something. And I was like, you've changed my life. These are, incredibly important to me as a child. So I've held on to these, through all the ramshackle moving around, train hopping, state jumping shit, lugging somehow suitcases full of books, and especially a huge box full of these guys. But anyways, I thought, yeah, we try something a little new. I've got another camera somewhat, and we can take a closer look at them. We'll read through them, maybe gain some insight, get into that fever dream of spooky season, because it is finally time. The autumnal swing is here, my friends. Home again, jiggity jig. But anyways, thank you for joining me. I know this is going to be a bit of a ramshackle thing. When is it not? When am I not in PRAGMAGICK doing something against any sort of format? And that is not by design, or maybe intelligent design, but it's definitely, I'm forever trying to find this rhythm with how to do some combustible media and some exciting, modes where I don't have to be so obsessive about the art that I'm creating, or the thing, and I can, do something that's that can attune to folks and different modes of any medium. And small press and print publishing has been a huge cornerstone for me and for We the Hallowed and for my partner Eric Millar, of which, and not to shill, we'll do some of that later, but wethehallowed.org. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, you get notified anytime we post. And I'll share the books that we just put out, and I'll share the Divergent Magic Grimoire. But if there's 5 of you here, there's probably 5 of you that already know what the fuck I'm doing. So, but yeah, thanks, Pins, for coming. Up the Pins punks. Pins are loose says, my mama has had some of those. I learned a lot from her. Nat Geo too, yeah. Man, that was such a remarkable time for publication. I don't remember a bureaucratic room without a Nat Geo in it, you know? And now it's iPads or whatever the hell. I've never read the dictionary from front to back. No? Ah, it's lovely. You get very verbose with a, dexterous vernacular after reading such a magnanimous tome, such as the dictionary. But anyways, KB, good to see you. Thank you all for coming. Let's just jump into it. I know things are probably looking a little weird, but I do have this camera, and I'll share with you right now. So here it is. This is the first issue of Magic. Let's see if I can solo this. There we go. Look at that. I'm using this kind of like crane situation, so it might be a little weird. Let me get rid of this name. How do I do that? We don't need no stinking name. Edit name and headline. Get out of there. We don't need no stinking name. Everybody knows what we're doing. I guess I can't. Well, shit. In the future, I will be using OBS. My dumbass somehow paid for professional StreamYard, I guess. I didn't mean to, but I'm going to make the most of it. Let's do that. All right, just to get that out of the way. Okay, Man, Myth, Magic. And if you cannot tell, those of you not in the know, the cover is illustrated by none other than Mr. Osmond Spare, a major ghost in my magical vernacular, and someone that still inspo punches still. This is one of his pieces, and it's beautiful. The most unusual magazine ever published, and they weren't kidding at that time, I'm sure. There's something about Man, Myth, and Magic that also became the apotheosis of when folks didn't have to occulting so much anymore. It was like this perfect, I don't know, just perfect kind of ray of get out of the broom closet. We like weird shit. Check our shit out. Pretty mass produced occulting, which, around that time you had like a lot of folk horror movies and giallo. So it was a lot in the popular consciousness. There was the Renaissance kind of happening within a culture, but it wasn't as, I would say, attainable, for say someone like me who grew up in bumfuck desert, where you could find this pretty easily, even though it was pretty small press and printed systematically, which we'll get into that. So anyways, Man, Myth, Magic, this is number 1. I'm sorry for the brightness, can't probably see that. Looks great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, good to see you, KB. No, I read small print on apps now. I did read encyclopedias and dictionaries. Hey, well, I've absolutely love them. I, working on Haunt Manual. It's one of my favorite parts about editing the published version of Haunt Manual is the lexicon. So I get to kind of create my own little glossary, index, and lexicon for weirdo shit that nobody will care about. But hey, I enjoy it. Anyways, yeah, most unusual magazine ever published. So we open it up here. It's this gorgeous shot. Purnell. Man, just the wash on that glare of the sun coming through those tepid and tiny barreled trees. Gorgeous. There's so much of the folk magic 70s. Folks not familiar with that kind of genre will know what I'm talking about when I say Wicker Man, the original, not the Nicolas Cage one. But that was such a big zeitgeist idea of like, the witchcraft current or the cunning folk. And you'll see it throughout all of this stuff, which is beautiful. And there's also modern zines, modern magazines, which I should also do this for those, for like Hellebore, that really has kind of carried that torch with that. But anyways, here we are. Editor Richard Cavendish. Also heard his name Marshall Cavendish. Not sure what that is. But it says, this week, Richard Cavendish introduces the entire work in his article on the supernatural. Special introductory articles appear in the next 10 issues of Man, Myth, and Magic on some of the principal subjects dealt with in the encyclopedia. They provide a background to more detailed articles in the encyclopedia and cover an exciting range of topics. So one thing I look as too as like a designer that I really like in their kind of log sheet here is how easy it is to get straight, to the information, how they print it, what their plan is. It's almost like their intention of how this is going to come out, which is actually a really brilliant intention. You got next week already. So this was all written. It wasn't like they were writing it like, say, a comic book, back then was, you turn one in, it gets printed maybe the next month as you're working on the next one. This was all compiled, and they got really creative with how to release these and how to obtain future parts of Man, Myth, and Magic. And I think there's magic in this here, and this is what I'm taking from it as somebody who's about to announce some pretty exciting things with print media, or small print media, I should say. It says, now that you have seen part 1 of Man, Myth, and Magic, wait a second, we just cracked open the page, man, you're rushing us out already. The weekly magazine that builds up into a complete encyclopedia of the supernatural, you will not want to miss future issues. Part 1 is on sale for 14 days. Part 2 will be published at the end of this 2-week period. Part 3 and the remaining parts will follow at weekly intervals. And I adore that. There's like a scarcity and a lovely call to arms about like within this 2-week period, we're going to be all about part 1. But after that, it's kind of in the bag to be part of the whole. And that's not unlike the release schedule experimentation I've been doing with music and, writing and some other ideas. And I didn't remember this. Obviously, I don't think I would have ascertained it being so phenomenal as a kid, because wasn't really into publishing. Well, not the mechanics of it. So I thought that was really cool and something very revealing about the magical intent that goes into not only, conducting the writing and the composition of the whole, but also like being very intentful and rigorous about how you're wide berthing this into the public. So that's really cool. This week's authors, part 1 begins with a general introduction to the supernatural, The Magic in Our Minds by Richard Cavendish, the editor of this encyclopedia. Fenton Wyness, writing on Aberdeen witches, is an architect, artist, antiquarian, and a well-known writer on Scottish subjects. His city by the Grey North Sea is a history of Aberdeen. I'm assuming Aberdeen, Scotland, since he's a writer on Scottish subjects. A fellow Aberdonian that folks might be familiar with is Mr. Seyroth the Mage, who has not only been on the program, close friend, good dude, great guy, and another Aberdonian witch himself. So that's cool. James Wellard, distinguished journalist and novelist. Dennis Dyer, who writes about Agrippa in this, is a fellow of Exeter College in Oxford. Well, look at him, fancy pants, where he has lectured in German literature since 1959. That's convenient. Germany got real interesting in the 50s, didn't it? After bad stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But so you got a large pedigree of really astute, well-learned folks that are all up in this piece. So that's pretty neat. I'm not going to read about the next week in part 2. We can look at that if we have time and if we're feeling it. So here we are. It's kind of this introductory article from Richard Cavendish. I think is really beautiful. It really consoles like the ruminations and mysteries around death, as a lot of bespoke kind of supernatural ideas or want to do. So I just think it's a good piercing of the veil. If you're looking at realities, the other, preternatural ideas and such, I think the first kind of question we all, wrestle with is that of the absolute of change, and that change being, you know, the decay of death and all that. So, Man, Myth, and Magic is an encyclopedia of the supernatural. Editor Richard Cavendish introduces this vast area of human speculation, which is as full of contrast and color, of darkness and light, as the mind of the man himself. Well, look at that. Put himself first and foremost, as he should. Well done, Mr. Cavendish. You've compiled quite the introductory and ubiquitous elbow of modern occultism here with Man, Myth, and Magic. So yeah, why not? Get a little pomp in there. I dig it. I'll read a little bit here of the introductory, just so you can see. A little mummified man. YouTube, don't censor me. He's been dead a long time. The supernatural is the night sky of our minds, the shadow side of our mental daylight of reason and hard fact. Like the night, it contains mystery, beauty, enchantment, and horror. It has a powerful attraction, and almost all of us, one way or another, are involved in it. We often talk about the modern age as a time of materialism, reason, technical and scientific advance, but the supernatural still plays a vitally important part in the world we live in. Many people still are religious. Many people still believe in astrology, palmistry, and a variety of superstitions. Let's see. It's hard to hold it like this and read. It is scarcely possible to live for very long without acquiring an interest, however reluctant, in the question of life after death. And each of our minds has its shadow side, where old terrors mingle with old truths. The supernatural surrounds us still at many different levels, in churches, synagogues, mosques, in dreams, in the antiseptic corridors of parapsychology laboratories, where experimenters test the strange powers of the mind, in attempts to make contact with the dead, in children's games and nursery rhymes, and experiences induced by LSD and other drugs, in newspaper stories of witchcraft, the black art, and the desecration of churches, in reports of poltergeists and exorcisms, in faith healing, in the increasing interest in primitive religions and magic, and in the Oriental religions, yoga, and meditation. The last 100 years have been the most flourishing period in the history of magic and occultism in the West since the 17th century. They have also seen the rise of modern study of comparative religion, the modern interpretation of mythology, the attempt to test objectively such phenomena as ghosts and telepathy, and the application of modern psychology to beliefs about the supernatural. These new lights and the darkness provide the basis of our approach in Man, Myth, and Magic. So there you go. Quite the introduction. Beautifully put, too. And I think, again, as we look upon history and, the kind of hauntological repeating of pop cultureisms and, constructs, as C.W. Chanter would say, the 20-year nostalgia loop, which now would be the 50, I guess we're in, since this was published in 1970. But you start to realize these kind of cascades and these even flows of, quote unquote enlightenment and quote unquote, mad assery, which I'm definitely for the latter. But this is wonderful and kind of 'tis the season. I thought I'd read. Is there life after death? Some cool sugar type skulls, and then we've got a William Blake painting, which is always a beautiful reminder of fine art. No one escapes death, and yet from the beginning men have hoped and believed in a world beyond death. Mummification points to the belief in survival of death, which goes back to the beginnings of human history and is suggested by Neanderthal burials more than 50,000 years ago. The rise of spiritualism in the 19th century centered on the attempt to get in touch with the dead. The question haunts us still: is there life after death? And for folks that don't remember spiritualism, definitely in the 19th century, 1800s, around Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a big proponent, Thomas Edison, these folks. But the first major case of spiritualism was from a group of sisters called the Fox Sisters, who invented rapping, where they would basically, for decades almost, convince folks of spirit contact by simply cracking their toe knuckles to communicate through knocks. I'm pretty sure it was found out as a complete hoax. One of the sisters came forward, something like that. Forgive me for not remembering correctly, but it's interesting to me that like the Enfield poltergeist comes to mind, where you probably had a lot of phenomena that could be pretty wondrous and like hard pressed to define by then scientific law or even scientific laws now. But one of the girls on the Enfield poltergeist did lie about one aspect, and that just kind of sullied the entire thing. So folks now think of it as an absolute. Well, she lied about this and blah blah blah. Fox Sisters kind of invented this whole rigmarole of the hoaxer in that case. I think they're clever, and I think really creative, honestly. And maybe there was some truth to it in the beginning, and then they just kind of got all excited about it. Robert Anton Wilson has that part in Prometheus Rising where he's talking about the guy that can talk to spirits, but when he starts to try to use it, for monetary gain, they stop talking to him. And so he begins to kind of lie about it. And I always think about that with the Fox Sisters of the Enfield, poltergeist, that there was probably truth to some of it, and they just got wrapped up in good old human nature, So yeah, fascinating stuff. I'm sure the Fox Sisters are actually in this encyclopedia. But yeah, I've always really, I don't know, I have an admiration for them in a way, because it was unheard of. It's just such a creative, creative bamboozling, from a couple of kids that turned into this gregarious thing. But yeah, look them up if you haven't. Oh, Buddy Leo, Mr. Frater Perseus, good to see you. Good evening, Keatington. I have many issues of Hellebore. Yes. Also, my patron saint of the weird, Kenneth Grant, was featured, I believe, a few times in Man, Myth, and Magic. He definitely was. He absolutely is. And as I said earlier, we have Kenneth Grant's one of his favorites. That's Austin Osman Spare on the cover. Number 1, come on. Austin Osman Spare also is in the very center of the PRAGMAGICK, Divergent Magic planchette. That's Austin Osman Spare right there. Planchette. Talk about spiritism, or spiritualism, I should say. That was, where the Ouija board and all of that stuff. So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. But yes, this is one of the pressings we did for We the Hallowed. It's a book that introduces a schema to ritualize, document, deconstruct, and further your experimentation and the rites that make up your own lore, your artistic projects, your day. It gives you a method I call the Dissolver Echo Resonar method to get through hurdles, to really punch on with things not working out in certain aspects of whatever ritual, or perhaps you want to look beyond it. This is through We the Hallowed Press, and you can pick this up on Amazon. There is a link in the description, but I thought I'd just grab this because that is Austin. Osman Spare in the center there. So yeah. Speaking of small press, but yeah. This so I haven't looked at these in God, it must be years and years. But one fantastic part of these, and forgive me YouTube, they'll probably censor me for this, are these reoccurring photographs taken of magical rituals by your veritable weekly weirdos out there in the brush of Britain, I'm sure. Yeah, looking like, I love that. But there's that kind of yellow tinged Kodak Filmora, wash of that photography. And got this guy laughing in the background. I love it. Covering the naughty bits. At least they can try. But yeah, you'll find these photographs from Jacqueline McKay throughout Man, Myth, and Magic, and they're really wonderful. It reminds me of like the occult version of God, what was that? The Joy of Sex. If anybody remembers that book, I might be dating myself. If you folks haven't realized, I didn't really have a lot of parent integration. I just had like a lot of media that came before. I was raised by like whatever books and shit I could find and stuff. So my references might be a bit old. But anyways, yeah. These photographs are fantastic. At last, it is possible to bring discussions of the supernatural out of the dark, a privilege denied even to our parents. And forgive me for treating it like this. This is a bad habit. These magazines have gone through quite the journey, so I keep doing that. But they were kind of well-torn, well-read before I got my hands on them. And we got some goetic art here. The lady is for burning. And this reads, witches are associated with demons, night, sensuality, and evil. They still horrify and delight the imagination, and they still exist. Asmodeus, who's right here, was originally the Persian fiend of the wounding spear, a storm spirit and personification of rage. Later, he developed into a supernatural force of lechery. He is represented as having 3 heads, those of a bull, a man, and a ram. In Paris in 1673, Madame de Montespan, forgive me, mistress of Louis the 14th, sacrificed children to Asmodeus to secure her hold on the king's affections by black magic. I did not know that. Madame de Montespan, mistress of Louis XIV, sacrificed children to Asmodeus to secure her hold on the king's affections by black magic. Wow. Yeah, from the Dictionnaire Infernal, 1863. Learn something new every day, Miss Madame Montespan. Miss Damon Madame Montespan. I love this. It goes into a lot of like if you remember in the beginning, Mr. Cavendish mentioned comparative religion. And of course, around something nebulous around this time, but definitely intercedes, is Joseph Campbell, Hero of the Thousand Faces, and The Hero's Journey. And this is an early depiction of that kind of comparative mythology of the hero's journey with Superman in kind of, Egyptian ritual lace, which is pretty neat. What does it say? The myth of hero continues to absorb men as it always has. And then it just says Superman. Wow, and he's still raging still. We got Superman media happening. Talk about a charged fucking sigil, right? Excuse my language. Never before has the full range of this fascinating subject been assembled in a single work of reference all. In a single work of reference all the facets of man's experience. In a single work of reference all the facets of man's experience of the supernatural seen together as a whole. Now, am I crazy? That seemed a bit jumbled rhythmically. Never before has the full range of this fascinating subject been assembled in a single work of reference all the facets. Oh, okay. Duh. There's a hyphen. It's not reference all. It's like, kind of a semicolon use here. All right, forgive me. I'm going to obsess over that. Oh, yes, the ESP cards. I forget what they were called. Folks might remember these and the beginning of Ghostbusters with Mr. Charlatan Peter Venkman doing the ESP tests. I remember testing the reality of extrasensory perception. The subject tries to forecast the fall of these cards. Yeah, they have a name. Forgive me, I'm sure somebody can find what the name of those exact cards are. They're pretty fascinating, but yeah, these kind of became these like weird archetypal. I don't know how they chose these symbols, but I do love that they're all. Someone had to sit down and really think about, differentiating symbols enough so that you couldn't muck up or fake an answer, And so, in a way, these have become the kind of 5 archetypal symbols. Suits in a way. Pretty fascinating. Some palmistry. Every time you cross your fingers, say a prayer, or read your stars in the paper, you express your surviving belief in the supernatural. This is a unique opportunity to make up your own mind on this vital area of human experience. We have the Hanged Man. Gets a bad rap. He looks in duress there, but the Hanged Man can be quite joyous. I got an inversion table, and I was upside down this morning, and I was literally thinking about this card. I was like, I'm the Hanged Man. It's pretty good. Life's good upside down. I don't know if anybody's been upside down lately. I don't think we're engineered to be upside down. It's crazy to think about that something as simple as just being upside down is really quite hard and, and completely foreign to achieve. And it's just so funny to me. Just getting upside down changes things. But as you see, it's got just your veritable pick of the litter of, Eastern, Western, a culture, religion, superstition, paranormal. At the roots of mythology and magic is a kind of thinking which is not random and which has its own curious logic. At the roots of mythology and magic is a kind of thinking which is not random and which has its own curious logic. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I can see the rhyme and meter of magical practice, but I also see the adverse too. I see the inverse, right? I see the upside down of that as well. Sometimes, there's chaos. There is no meaning. Sometimes, maybe. I don't know. Don't mean to get all philosophical here. Produced in consultation with the world's foremost authorities, more than 200 expert authors from all over the world. Here we go. Here's our editorial board of Man Myth and Magic. We have Mr. Richard Cavendish as a leading authority on magic and witchcraft. His book, The Black Arts. Speaking of which. You mean this book? Richard Cavendish. So this is another ubiquitous book that has been, a cornerstone kind of text for a lot of folks. My friend Braun had gifted me this. They are a they were on the podcast, but they're a third generational hoodoo practitioner. Beautiful soul. Gave me this, which when they give me gifts, sometimes I think it's like tongue in cheek, like go fuck yourself up with this in a way, But this is another one of those classic books, and I literally did not mean to have this. This was just sitting in my books near my desk, and it's just so funny. I just realized, oh yeah, that's that guy. So this, as you can see, is a very foundational. Other ones go through ritual magic, necromancy, psychic attacks, the Kabbalah, and names of power, which is where I kind of marked it. As you can see, that's where it lays. It's in that chapter. And gematria, I wonder why. No, my work with listening post alpha has definitely made me pick this up. But yeah, this is Richard Cavendish. This is the man, the myth, the legend who compiled Man, Myth, and Magic, and he is of a illustrious pedigree when it comes to all of this. So yeah, Black Arts, another great book. I'm starting to sense a synchronous rhythm here about early 1970s. Actually, this must have been the 60s though. That's why I got confused in the beginning. 67. Yeah, that was a good year for music as well. 1967. That was Velvet Underground and Nico, I believe. Yeah, that was Love. Forever Changes. That was Stooges' first album. I could be wrong now. 1969. Oh, it was 1969. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, good year. Are we in a Marshall year? Maybe Leo can answer that. If there's any kind of, routinized comeuppance that happens, every certain years. I know Bobby Hale of Listening Post Alpha, I think his metric was like every 7 years or something since a certain date. But there is a rhythm and a poetry to decades ending in a certain number, and those numbers kind of encapsulating certain parts and ephemera of the decade before it. So something fun to look into. But yeah, other folks in here: John Simons, E.R. Dodds, Glenn Daniel, Glenn Danzig. Just kidding. Aberdeen Witches. This one's for Seiroth the Mage. Here, the minister of Aberdeen, the magical minister of Aberdeen. In the archives of the city of Aberdeen is a remarkable collection of documents which gives details of the proceedings against many persons accused of the detestable practice of witchcraft and sorcery. Marginal notes indicate that the documents were those used in court, and most of them consisting of détails or charges against the accused. Well, shit. Looks like Aberdeen got hit too. Abracadabra. So here we go. So now we're getting into the encyclopedia quotient of this thing. We're done with the preamble. We're getting into the alphabetical nuts and bolts here. Abracadabra. I'll read a little bit about this one because this is, another fascinating and if not cornerstone kind of piece of magic. So let's see if I can bring this up. I know, I'm sorry. I keep wanting to fold it, but here, we'll do this. I'm sure you can't read it that well, but there's Mr. Abracax from the Goesh. So the word abracadabra has been so widely used in magic that it has passed into the patter of the stage conjurer and appears in dictionaries as a term for magical nonsense words in general. Ooh, I'm a big fan of magical nonsense words. Daniel Defoe, in his Journal of the Plague Year, published in 1722, says that many people who were terrified of the plague acted as if it was an evil spirit which threatened to take the possession of their bodies. They're not wrong. I mean, what is bacteria? Right? They tried to ward it off with certain words or figures, as particularly the word abracadabra formed in a triangle or a pyramid. In the Middle Ages, the word was believed to cure fevers. The earliest instructions for using it comes from a poem on medicine for Quintus Serenus Simonicus, a doctor who accompanied the Roman Emperor Severus on his expedition to Britain in 208 AD. It has to be written down, dropping a letter in each line. The usual way of writing it is, I'm sure everybody's seen that. There. Yeah. Freaking throw a dime and hit a hipster with that tattoo, you know what I mean? The paper on which the word is written must be tied around the patient's neck with flax worn for 9 days, and then thrown backwards over the shoulder into a stream which runs eastwards. Let's listen to that again. So here, we actually have a pragmatic spell here, folks. If you ever want to ward off some evil plague spirits, you got to write abracadabra in that way, in the descending pyramid, and then got to write it on a piece of paper on which the word is tied around, or which the paper is tied around the patient's neck with flax and worn for 9 days, and then thrown backwards over the shoulder, doesn't specify which one, take your pick, into a stream of which runs eastwards. So yeah, sending that shit downstream to the east. I might try that. If yeah. Groucho says palm and egg cycle is 7 years. Yeah, I was right. Really excited for that work to come out. Look for that from Senior Bobby Hale. But yeah, there's something fascinating about these, old, kind of banishing casts, like intention punching into the ether or the atmosphere. And I just love these little pragmatic, you're doing a choreography, you're doing a dance. And what that does is, not only does it write it to your brain, but you're also kind of announcing the psychic handshake to the great beyond as well. So somebody try that. The idea is evidently that as the word shrinks away to nothing, so will the fever. Several other shrinking charms of this kind are known, including a Jewish spell against a demon named Shabriri, thought to cause diseases of the eye. To get rid of him, you say Shabriri, Briri, Riri, Iri, Ri, whittling him away to nothing. Shabriri, Briri, Riri, Iri, Ri. Abracadabra resembles and may be descended from a Jewish cure for fever. And then the Jewish cure goes Abba, Ab, Abra, Abra, Abrac, Abraca, Abracal, Abracala, Abracal, Abraca, Abrac, Abra, Abra, Ab. There you go. There's your classical Jewish cure for fever there in my terrible tongue. You're welcome. This must be also hung around the patient's neck, and he must not look at it for the next 24 hours. It apparently builds the heat of the fever up to a breaking point and then makes it dwindle away as the fire abates. Another possibility is that abracadabra is connected with Abraxas, a god who appears on magical charms, gems, and rings used to ward off evil from the 2nd century AD and onwards. Abraxas originated with the followers of an eccentric Christian thinker named Basilides, who taught at Alexandria from about 120 to 140. One of his theories was that Jesus had not really been crucified. Ooh, we got ourselves a rogue. Look at you, punk rock. All right. The followers seem to have constructed the name Abraxas for the god who ruled each year and its 365 days. The letters of the Greek alphabet also stood for numbers, and the Greek letters of Abraxas add to 365. There's some gematria for you. Below this god were 365 orders of spirits occupying 365 heavens, the lowest of which was the domain of the spirits who ruled the earth. The 7 letters of Abraxas may stand for the 7 planets known in antiquity, believed in astrology to control the workings of fate. There you go. The more you know. Achilles. Ooh, acupuncture. And I say ooh because my back issues, folks have been telling me to try it. But I actually made myself scared of needles through magic, actually. And that's a hard one for me to swallow. But maybe I'll give it a go at some point. Maybe they can knock me out and poke me about. Knock me out and poke me about. Yeah, Adam. Oh, this is cool. So here we have an original advert within the very first issue of Man Myth Magic. Oh, doesn't this take you back, kiddos? Look at that. You got all the fun books, and there you go. There's your collected volumes, gold lettering. Hey, we were just on that page. Look at this. $2.95 for my first Man Myth Magic binder, saving me $1 over the regular $3.95 price. Wow, who wouldn't love a binder of Man Myth and Magic for $3? I enclose 24 or 23.70 for my complete library set of 7 binders. Hey, 23.70, 23 and 7 for 7 binders, all of the regular price of the 6 binders. And this is hilarious, and it just goes to show just how much has changed. I mean, you can get or We the Hallowed books for relatively cheap. I mean, not freaking $4 cheap, but just goes to show for small press like we're doing and we want to do, there is going to be some real deep forethought on, you know, pricing ethically, really just kind of paying back for materials. We love to do it. It's not like we expect to be paid for stuff, but if you make things, there is that kind of tit for tat. There's like an expectation from folks when they spend money that it's got to be good, and that expectation is actually rewarding. It makes you want to make it good. And so this idea I have for this, I don't want to announce it yet, but next week will be the 100th. How do I say this? The 100th released, or I guess canon episode of PRAGMAGICK. So that's 100 episodes of PRAGMAGICK next week, and it will be about Dim Zoom, my work with Mr. Frater Perseus, and during that episode, I'm going to talk about what comes next, and what comes next for We the Hallowed, what comes next for the projects, and we're really pushing for small press, less internet, back to snail mail, artifacts, talismans, handmade stuff, and that's all I'll say for now. But stay tuned for that. There's some really exciting stuff that we've got in store. So yeah, here's a whole subsection on Africa, which is beautiful. Surrounded from birth by all the wonders and terrors of nature, primitive man discovered objects of reverence and fear all around him. Black men were puzzled by assurances that they were children of God on the one hand and slaves of white man on the other. Yeah, damn. Talk about a dichotomy. Islam, religion of the desert, white faith in the dark world. Medicine men and witch doctors are not the boogeymen and ogres of popular imagination. I mean, this is really carrying a heavy load for these, what we now to be so obvious. But I'm sure in 1970, you had to be pretty astute in discussing foreign matters and different cultures, especially to imperialist countries like Britain and America, and be like, yo, y'all fucking up. Sudden death from sheer terror is not unknown, where a man discovers an evil fetish in his house. I'm sure fetish used in this way is, kind of charm. Wow. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful, beautiful photo. Let's see. Priestess in Egypt. Czar priestess in Egypt. The priestess goes into trance to expel certain evil spirits called czars from her flock. Czar. Oh shit. My dog's name is Zorro. Maybe that means evil spirit smiter. Another made up word I gave him, but funny synchronous connotation nonetheless. Yeah. Beautiful photography. I love that high contrast. It's very stark too, and I wonder because they go from, beautiful Technicolor print to very stark, and it's just showcasing a certain photographer's black and white film set, which is really wonderfully put together. And yes, we have Mr. Agrippa, who needs no introduction. Agrippa as Black Magician. One of the many stories told about Agrippa was that he went out one day, leaving the key of a secret room in the house with his wife. She foolishly lent it to the lodger, a student, who went into the room and found a huge book of spells, which he began to read. After a while, he looked up and found a demon standing in front of him, asking why it had been summoned. He gaped at it in horror, and the demon strangled it. Agrippa returned and, fearing a charge of murder, made the demon restore the student to life for a few hours. Oh, gee, thanks, Agrippa. Really, really looking out. The young man was seen walking in the street, but when the demon's magic wore off, he collapsed. Damn, he couldn't even get him, back to life in like a place he'd want to be for however long he was going to be alive. It's like, can you get him back to life? All right, now, dude, you got to rush home to do whatever you want. On his way home, to tell his wife that he loves her. Fucking drops dead. Thanks a lot, Agrippa. But yes, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, born in Cologne and died in 1535, most certainly a Grenoble. His books on magic and occultism were widely known, and he has both famous and infamous at the courts and universities of Western Europe. His real name was Heinrich Cornelius. I always say Cornelius, but it's just Cornelis. After the fashion of the time, he Latinized Cornelis into Cornelius and awarded himself the bogus noble title of Agrippa von Nettensheim from the Roman founder of Cologne and the name of a place near Cologne. So yeah, got your beautiful Agrippa. I'm surprised it's only just a spread. There's not much more. It does say up here, man and God. Agrippa argues that man contains the whole world and God in himself. Therefore man hath in himself all that is contained in the greater world, so that there remaineth nothing which is not found even truly and really in man himself. And all these things do perform the same duties in him as in the great world. There are in him the four elements with the most true properties of their nature, and in him an ethereal body, the chariot of the soul, in proportion corresponding to the heaven. There are in him the vegetative life of plants, the senses of animals, of celestial spirits, the angelical reason, and the divine understanding. Man being made divine understanding. Man, being made another world, doth comprehend all the parts thereof in himself, but also doth receive and contain even God himself. Therefore man is the most express image of God. Seeing man containeth in himself all things which are in God. Whosoever therefore shall know himself, shall know all things in himself, especially he shall know God, according to whose image he was made. And that's from his occult philosophy books. The evil spirit must choose evil. He is not evil absolutely, but becomes evil by choice. And yes, I understand that. Above lion-headed God and Mithraism, a religion which rivaled Christianity, he is believed to be identical with Ahriman, the most evil mind, ruler of death and destruction, now in the Vatican Museum. Yeah, there you go. But anyways, yeah, quite beautiful. As you can see, it's kind of collected. Obviously, you're not going to get through all of the A's in one of these 45-page magazine prints, but beautifully put together. That's a great photograph as well. Probably a play. Let's see. Below, convents were often the scene of psychological disturbances which were put down to the action of devils. From La Religieuse, a film about a young girl who is forced into a convent against her will and becomes the prey of demonic forces. Ah, yes. The poor nuns, such prey and fodder for the demon. Ah, and yes, we have Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies here. Quite a famous drawing. How to use the encyclopedia. This is interesting. So this is your back page now. The encyclopedia is a comprehensive survey of the supernatural, a study of magic, mythology. Yeah. Here we go. Will be published in weekly parts every Wednesday for 112 weeks. Wait, that sounds different than what they were saying in the beginning. And I can't give them shit because if you read any of my writing consistently where I talk about plans, they change all the time. But it is interesting. Man, Myth, and Magic will be published in weekly parts every Wednesday for 112 weeks. So published, but then printed every 2 weeks. Yeah, part 1 is on sale for 14 days. Part 2 will be published at the end of this 2 week. Wait, they used the same word, didn't they? Published. I don't know. Won't have to look into it. It's long gone. We believe that the best way to grasp a huge subject like this is to present in quantities which can be read without effort. This is why we have chosen to publish in part form rather than in several massive and expensive volumes. Well, this is part and parcel as to why I've released on the Song Sigil series. You know, that was kind of a big intention behind it that way. Was, yes, these are all songs on the album, but in this way, you know, they allow the art and the methods therein, the focus, like to really breathe and to be built up and enjoy it all together. So I totally get it. It's wonderful. Starting next week, Frontiers of Belief. I am very stoked. Here's your printed volumes of Man, Myth, Magic. But I am very excited. If folks are interested, we can revisit this at another Mediamancy. Maybe after a break into some other Mediamancy, whether it be, you know, VHS tapes, film, albums. Deeply thinking about another Hauntomantic album that has followed me since I was a kid. This is Crispin Glover's album, The Big Problem. I've had this CD, one of the few remaining things I've had since I was a kid, so very personal, but also a bit of niche Hauntomantic magical media. So might do, definitely eventually going to do one on Crispin Glover, and actually some of his books that I have too. But other things like that will happen in this series. We can revisit Man, Myth, and Magic. Here's number 2. Man, Myth, and Magic number 3. These covers are just fantastic. Here's 4. As you can see, special feature. Ooh, this one's taking a nice grain. 6. Yeah. And then some kind of random ones throughout. We've got number 11, an illustrated encyclopedia of the supernatural. See, now they're talking. Here's Christopher Lee. It's Dracula, I believe. Mr. Christopher Lee. Another 70s icon, especially that one. 42. These are just some random ones. And of course, number 23. That was by accident. But yeah, as you can see, they traverse the entire gamut with wonderful photos. If anything, if anybody's interested not only in just the kind of nice bite-sized distillation of divinatory things. This one's cool. It's got a cool thing about divination. It's the photographs. The photographs are absolutely magnificent. There's another kind of in that series from, what's her name, McKay, that takes these awesome kind of 1970s, Cunning Folk meets Thelemic, Golden Dawn, aesthetics, right? But in that beautiful 1970s sheen. But yeah, they traverse like such a gamut. The Green Man, very cool. Grimm's Fairy Tales, yeah. But yeah, we won't go through each one, but we can maybe, like I said, in a future one, we'll pick another volume, kind of go through. If folks dug that, I know it's probably a little monotonous. Look at that, some Hammer horror. It's Christopher Lee, yeah, beautiful. If anything, just the film nerd in me. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There's Caesar on the crooked slope there. Love that film. Talk about wonderful aesthetics and design. But, God. Yeah. Film has just been such a, magnanimous part of, like, really incepting these kind of romantic and otherworldly mythologies. And, oh yeah, we got the dowsing rod here at the end. Oh yeah, one thing I noticed too, I'll just quickly mention. What I like is no space is left unutilized. And by that I mean, in that first one there was maybe an advert on a page for stuff, but everything's full. You have the dowser on the very back page of here, number 34. And the back cover is just the rest of that article. Which I thought was really cool. That the back cover doesn't need to be the whole pomp and circumstance of a book jacket. It's just like, keep the writing going. We've got 112 of these, dude. Let's keep going. But I remember Leo was mentioning Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant vampire cover. Let's see. Kenneth Grant vampire cover, yeah. I'll have to look for that. There's Crowley. But I remember this one specifically, number 11, and I can't remember why. Jacob Boheme. We're in the Bees. Book of the... that makes sense. Book of the Dead. So, when I was working with Zozobra, this long-form fiction, which uses a lot of comparative, mythology, especially of death and rebirth. These really are around that time that came into my life when I was starting to write all of that, and so these just became a wealth of getting in on the nitty gritty on some of these fantastic, inspirational. Hieronymus Bosch, of course. Maybe someday you'll end up in a periodical encyclopedia about weird shit, if you are so lucky. But yeah, Phantom Ships. Hey, wasn't I just talking about my friend Bran? Interesting. Bran the Blessed. Yep. Gotta read the signs. But anyways, yeah. I'll come back in here. How do I exit this? Exit solo. Boom. So here we are, folks. Thank you for checking this out. I think as Leo was saying, Hellebore. I do have those. I don't think they're in here. Let's see what else I have. Some Santa Muerte stuff. This is all just kind of bric-a-brac from other things. But yeah, I'd like to, do ones on yeah, a lot of the media, the the printed, the tactile things. Friend Tom Wiston, one big thing I'd like to do is cassettes. Um, and this is from Tom Wiston, who's been on the chat. He's been on a Honquinox, but these are his wonderful cassette tapes that he put out. They're not so much hauntomantic, meaning like they weren't part of my youth that were influential, but these deserve to be listened to and seen. They're just so gorgeous. And a prime example of what We the Hallowed is going to be moving into. More tactile things like this. And I'm not sure if I ever showed these. But very beautiful. Tom Wiston. Please check him out. TomWiston.bandcamp.com. Here, I'll cover this so you don't download it, but I'll put it in the chat. Anyways, you get some cards, but it's this wonderful printing. It's absolutely beautiful. Incredible. And he is such a maestro. 17 of 50 here. And this is the shit that excites me now. It's not the barrage of digital, the digital detritus of things, of just, kind of lost in the sauce, streaming, moving away from social media at large. It's just like this vacuous, empty, robot-filled space that folks are kind of losing themselves into. And I almost feel being vulnerable through human error and these wonderful prints and gaffes and goofs and mess ups and doing a cassette label where putting together every single cassette. I wanted to show this one. This is from Tom, and this is his blood on the cassette. So a drop of his blood and this beautifully magical fucking talisman of a release. Absolutely inspirational. And just the printing alone. Look at that. Just absolutely gorgeous. And definitely influential. Very much in the realm of which we will now be parlaying our art within. And we'll have some pretty mighty announcements soon regarding what that looks like, how folks can sign up and support, and get magical artifacts into their hands from ours. This somatic kind of exchange of trans-dimensional ideas. Because if you're gonna do some digital, they have to meet. And if it's getting lopsided, then you got to go further the other way to kind of catch that, catch that plateau that's needed. M to the power of 3. Yes. What's up, Mary June? Yeah, tactile as fuck. Yeah, brilliant stuff. I did want to share. I will, vlog the log, as it were, by discussing some projects and some things that are now out. If those of you don't know, please check out wethehallowed.org. We've been doing our due diligence to kind of reconstruct not only our website, but to get it prepped for this big kind of magnanimous turning that's going to happen. And we are currently kind of redesigning it. I'll go ahead and remove that camera. But this is wethehallowed.org. Eric J. Millar, Frater Perseus, and I, we're really getting into the publishing. Publishing is our main goal, whether it's the Divergent Magic Grimoire, which I showed earlier. If you go to the website, or if you go to our link tree, we have put together all of our tactile as fuck releases, whether it's print, literature, and design and illustration, magical books like the Divergent Magic Grimoire, the Disruption Generator, these oracles, games, zine. We are getting ready to do a big newsletter, but a print typeset one that will be short run and put together and released very soon to a select number of folks. We're right now trying to figure out how people can sign up in that way, if it's like tiers on Patreon, in which case if you wanted to even just be a free subscriber to the Patreon, just so you can kind of get notified when things like that happen. If you go to patreon.com/pragmagick, you can join for free. I do have tiers. These are probably going to change soon as we get real creative about compiling mailing lists and this kind of like a consistent, if you give X and X amount of money a month, then every month you are mailed something, whether that's a cassette, whether that's other stuff. Again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Just understand that here I'll do this. Understand that this little dominion right here of VHS and cassette and book binding and music creating, but especially that kind of dominion right here is going to be where some beautiful archaic hauntomantic media is created. It's handmade. It's hand even kind of duplicated and recorded from a 4-track, from an old camcorder, a corrupted camcorder, to old film VHS to your hands. But we'll have more on that later. In any case, yeah, thanks for dropping by. I know this is pretty low key. You should share the logo for the newsletter. Yes. How do I do that? So everybody, this is Eric J. Millar, partner in crime, We the Hallowed. We are doing the newsletter. He sent it to me on Facebook just to give you a little taste of the typeset. And here we go. It will be called dun 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 dun. God, I hate StreamYard. Why do I do this? No, not add to stage. Get out of here. Stop screen share. Present. So our newsletter is going to be called... Where is it? Keeps doing that. Oh, there we go. I'm really bad at this, as you can't tell. The Hollers. The We the Hallowed Hollers. It's going to be printed on a big piece of paper that will be folded into pamphlet form and unfolded into newspaper reading, full of text and art and images, and all of that will be actually printed, will be, handmade, hand-folded, put together with writing from me, Eric, Frater. We're going to open it up to some submissions because we're going to be working within kind of these templates of the whole. So it's very interesting. I got inspired from this really old desert kind of newsletter that I picked up at, an antique shop. But basically it was, it looks like a pamphlet, and you unfold it and it's like, oh, okay, it's like book form. And then you unfold it this way, and that whole page is like a newspaper. And then you unfold it really big, and it's like a full newspaper. So that's what's coming next. That's the big project that we're doing for We the Hallowed. If you'd like to be a part of that, I think the best thing to do would be to probably on Patreon, even just join as a free, so you get notified when I post announcements. You could even at wethehallowed.com sign up there. There's a sign up sheet, and that'll notify you whenever we post something. I put out recently the REVEL ROSZ song sigil. I am this close to releasing the second song sigil, but that's going to take some work with the audiomancy component. You can check out the song sigil, the first one, on all streaming platforms. Like I said, these song sigils will build up into the first big time full length album. And this next song sigil won't just be a single. It's going to be a mini EP of sorts with a reoccurring kind of film score motif around it. And I'm really excited for it. I think it's the coolest thing I've done yet musically. And it means a lot to me. It's very personal, not as kind of raucous and crazy as this first one, even though the first one's fine. It's fine. But yeah, you can check that out at revelross.bandcamp.com. If you just go here, this is the first one. There's Mary. And what I'll do is when I release the second song sigil, I'm going to add some tracks to this first song sigil release, like variations of songs of the song and some other unheard things that only patrons at patreon.com/pragmagick have been privy to. And also, I can't say enough how excited I have been for Dim Zoom, my project with Frater Perseus. For those that like a bit of the harder edge kind of music, something I've always wanted to do was to create a bit of a fuzz gospel, kind of doom rock thing. And Frater Perseus in Illinois played the drums, created these wonderful rhythms, and then me here played the guitars and vocals and all that. And that is Dim Zoom. You can see this. Oh, and here's Tom Wisson. Actually, speak of the devil, he supported us, and you can too. This is the fantastic creature that put out these cassettes I was just sharing. But anyways, yeah, you can find us at dimtzum.bandcamp.com. In the notes, I didn't add it, but on PRAGMAGICK, on the channel of which you're watching now, you can see the Videomancy. I put together some video art for the full album that combines footage from Logan Ford, who did the photographs in front of me and behind me for both the releases. But we did drone footage when I was out on the New Mexico land that he acquired, and I made kind of these psychedelic edits for it, and it's really great. I absolutely adore this thing. This album alone, I just don't know where it came from. I don't know how it barked so hard and kind of manifested so fast, and feel very lucky to be a part of it. But we put in a lot of work, and it's the first time I've ever created something with somebody else that hasn't been in the room. And at the same time, nothing was sequenced. There were no digital isms, no keyboards. The only samples were that of, kind of spoken word samples. But everything else was played somatically, whether or not we were in the same room. Everything was performed, just like, most of my stuff. As you can tell, I'm pretty adamant against any kind of AI kind of integration for me personally. I'm sure there's somebody is doing something great, like Ali Words is doing a great communion with AI, but also being very physical with it and somatic and working within this realm. So there's a place for it. I just haven't found it yet. I'm not impressed. I don't really care about it, and there's like an uncanny valley thing for me. I can immediately pick up when it's in that falsity of creation, and it turns me off. So it's just like a weird, weird thing I have against it. I mean, it's funny. There's some good funny stuff with it, but yeah, everything from We the Hallowed is made from our fingers to our toes. From our diet in the morning, from our bad sleep the night before, from our, pizza digestion that day, from the, bad bouts of irritable brain syndrome that we go through. it's all documented in the process of, the atmosphere in which we exist. So you can support all that. It's a lot of work. We all love to do it, though. I wouldn't have it any other way. Your support is not expected. It's appreciated deeply, and definitely we go above and beyond to say thank you. And with magnanimous works of art that very few people will probably hear or see. So feel special about that, because you are special. But anyways, that's my screed about all the goings on. There's quite a bit. As always, stay tuned here. The next podcast, the 100th episode, will be the one with Frater Perseus about Dim Zoom. Kind of breaking down that album and talking about the magics within that. Yeah, this was fun. I had a good time. I felt like, I unearthed these man, myth, magic things, moving some stuff around in the bookshelf, and I was like, why, instead of like sitting down and going through them, why don't I go through them with other people? Why don't why don't I showcase these kind of, everybody had talked about man, myth, and magic, I feel like, on various podcasts, especially the old heads, the older generations. It was such a ubiquitous thing for them, and thought it was a good opportunity to kind of take the time to stop being so masturbatory, right? With my own music or writing, or that's the other one, hauntmanual.com. Go there. There's a bunch of other stuff. But like to actually kind of investigate and go through the artifacts that helped inspire and inspo punch this trajectory that a lot of us share, no matter how disparate it is. So I did want to leave on the AI topic. Here's a hauntomantic craft idea for you folks. Bring my other little camera over here. Instead of, and listen to me clearly. I want you to hear me clearly. Instead of generating AI to grace the cover of whatever work you labored on for so long, whether it be an album or a book, unless you're intending for that cover in some way to be, communed with artificial intelligence. But if you're just using AI to generate something to embellish or to represent your art, especially if it's a book or an album, I think it does it a disservice. I think if you're not going to consider the cover of this hard labored work of art, that has taken you months, years, maybe even decades to create, and you don't think kind of twice about how the significance or the semiotics of what the cover is in representing that work to the greater consciousness, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And I have a solution for you. Instead of using AI art, go to your local antique store, go to your local, antique store, estate sale, whatever. I'm sure you come across these thrift stores, these Goodwills, where they have trunks of old photos. These beautiful old portraits of lost souls sitting there at the Goodwill, just kind of collecting dust. These memories, these haunted, stark figures that are just completely forgotten and thrown away like trash that nobody uses, and instead are using silly words to generate a prompt that looks so obvious like AI art. Why don't you give some of these old souls, these old ghosts, a platform to haunt on with? And so go to your local, weirdo shop, curiosity shop, largely an antique shop. You'll find these antique malls, and discover old photos to use to grace, that are synchronous, that are so deeply set within the human experience of creating such a work. Again, if you're using AI for your cover because your book or your album is about that communion with AI, I get it. But otherwise, look at these wonderful gilded memories of yesteryear that are just collecting. Oh yeah, there's a picture of Mary. I don't know how that got in there, but are just collecting dust. Look how beautiful these are. Someone went through all the purpose to develop these memories that they probably carried around for their entire life and looked and shared with kids and grandkids, and they just end up kind of lost, like lost souls in different places, you know, different commerce places around, just aching, just baking to be utilized. And I'm sure there's some ethical things about these, as there are with AI art. Maybe don't use this, here this wonderful picture of a young child to grace your murder porn comic. Maybe don't do that. I'm sure there's a lot of ways to ethically and soundly use these beautiful artifacts for your art, if you're not, doing a serial killer manual or something. But just an idea. Take a look. Look how haunting and cool. Something very Zodiac killer about this one. But just a thought. So the next time you write, some cheap words in a prompt and decide that you're going to use whatever AI art uses to scramble other people's works of art and images into something that you think just suffices as a album cover, maybe give someone else a chance. Maybe give a living ghost a chance. Maybe give an actual direct communion with the past and do something new with it. Manipulate it. I mean, what is true hauntomancy if not, taking the taking the rubric of the old and deconstructing it to make something new, but giving it reverence. I mean, come on. Don't you just see this on like some Midwest emo band or from the 90s? Pre-emo? I mean, this one especially. I'm using this for something. It's a fucking treasure chest. All hidden, decayed, discarded, and just waiting to haunt on. Just waiting to get some reverence of memories long faded, long forgotten, and ultimately discarded because they're not your memories. Nobody wants somebody else's memories. Well, guess what? That's exactly what you're doing with AI. Because those aren't your memories either. At least this way, you can find some really beautiful inspiration. To embellish that wonderful labored work of art that you've done, instead of just resigning it to some easy fodder, right? And that's I don't mean to admonish anybody, just something to think about, and something to understand that a lot of us folks see that and feel like, if this was generated by AI art, then they probably don't care as much about the content that this is embracing. This packet's embracing. So, a hauntomantic craft idea for you, if you will. Finding some really beautiful old photographs. But yeah. And then some fun ones of Mary and the trees. And Mary and the trees again. All right. Thank you all for coming to my TED Talk about repurposing old photographs and hauntomancy as a whole. You've all been so lovely. Follow Dim Zoom on my Bandcamp. Thank you, Pins. Up the Pins, punks. Amen to that. Eric J. Millar. Every memory is all the memories. 0 equals infinity. Amen. Unless you're AI, then it's just ones and zeros. But anyways, that was a bad joke. But yeah, big love to everybody. Please stay tuned for a lot of great stuff coming down the line, and maybe I will keep this Mediamancy thing going. It's been a lot of fun to go through, and there's just so much bric-a-brac and ridiculous shit in my dimming room and in my life that bears sharing. So stay tuned for that next time. As always, big love, everybody. And you know the drill. Haunt on.
When we are doing the will of our true self, we are inevitably doing the will of the universe. In magic, these are seen as indistinguishable. That every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself. And as long as you are doing the will of the universe, then it is impossible to do anything wrong.